Welcome to session on Introduction to C. In this session, I will introduce you to the C language. I will just take an example program, simple example program, and I will tell you what will be the components of any C program. What will be the components of any C program? C is a general purpose programming language. General purpose means it can be used for all kinds of purposes. All kinds of purposes. In fact, it is one of the highly efficient languages which is used to build large software like the Oracle DBMS. Entire Oracle DBMS is written in C. Similarly, even if we consider the Python language, the interpreter of Python language called as C Python is written in C language. Please don't underestimate C. C is very powerful and is going to stay. Okay, somebody may say Python is the language, you can directly learn Python language. It's not true. It's not true. C and its extension C++ are going to stay for another 10 years at least. C is a high level language with some low level feature. High level language means how far it is from the hardware. So usually if a language is totally dependent on the hardware, it is called as low level language. If the language is independent of the underlying hardware, then it is called as high level language. C is also a high level language, but it has some low level features which allows you to write the programs which are efficient. It can be used to do both system programs and application programs. The software which we are going to write can be classified into two types: system programs and application programs. Both kinds of programs can be written using C language. C can be used to write efficient programs. Efficient programs mean they consume less amount of memory and execute fast. They are used to write large and complex software. There is no choice. You cannot use Python and Java to write large and complex software. So if you want efficiency, if the software is complex, then you have to go with the C language or its extension C++. C is a structured programming language. That means it gives structure to the programs which you are going to write. There are actually what are called as structured programming concepts called as sequencing, condition checking, and then repetition. So all those things are supported by the C language. How it supports means they are supported in the form of loops. We'll study the loops later, but C is a structured programming language. So using the constructs of the C language, you can write a program which is structured. C programs are portable. That means you write a program for one computer, it can be executed on other computer also. This is the general syntax of a C program. So first there will be what are called as preprocessor directives, and then main. Any C program will contain this main. Any C program starts with this main, and then these bracketing symbols, flower brackets. Within the flower brackets, you have two kinds of statements. One is declarative statements where you declare the variables, and executable statements. Preprocessor directives are nothing but those statements which provide information, to the compiler, and this will be processed before the compilation process. Before the compilation, they are processed. That's why they are called as preprocessor directives. So they are represented in the form of preprocessor directives. There are three kinds of preprocessor directives, or mostly we'll use only this as a beginner. We use only hash include and hash define. These are the preprocessor directives. These are processed before the compilation. There is another type of preprocessor directives called as conditional compilation. Hash include tells the compiler or it indicates that some files are to be included. What are those files means? They are related to the library. That means you will not be writing the entire program. Suppose accessing the keyboard and monitor, they are complex. So what is done is there will be what are called as already existing programs, built-in programs. The content of those programs are to be included. How? Using hash include. Hash define, which is used for what is called as macro substitution, or in simple terms, they are called as symbolic constants. Symbolic constants. So compilation related some directives are there which are defined using hash if define. So these symbols are the bracketing symbols that are supported by the C language. All the programming language statements are enclosed within these bracketing symbols. Bracketing symbols. Declarative statements where you declare the variables, functions, etc. They provide some information. They provide the information. Okay. For the compiler, they provide the information. So the actual statements which have some effect are called as executable statements. Executable statements have some effect. Suppose C equal to A plus B. That means add the content of A and B and store the content in C. So they have some effect. Such statements are called as executable statements. Whereas the declarative statements provide information, executable statements will have some impact, some effect. This is simple example program. Hash include stdio.h. First statement, that is preprocessor directive. So what we are telling is include the content of the file called as stdio.h. Now .h stands for header file, stdio stands for standard input output. So standard input output functionality please include, because I may use some functionality that is present in stdio.h like reading, printing, etc. That functionality is already present in stdio.h. I want to make use of it, so include that content. Followed by the main. Main is the name of the function. So always any C program will contain this main. Followed by the empty parenthesis. You can pass parameters also, that we'll see later. So you can see here, these are the bracketing symbols. These are declarative statements and these are the statements which have some effect. So preprocessor directives followed by main, bracketing symbols, declarative statements, executable statements. So these are the parts of the C program, parts of this example C program. So hash include stdio.h. So include the content of stdio.h. These are bracketing symbols. Integer ABC indicates that A, B, C are to be declared as integers, or we are saying that A, B, C I am making use of, they are the integer variables. Now what exactly the variable we will study later, but we are making use of ABC. Within the ABC I will store integers. That integers are represented using int. Okay, any C program or any C programming language statement except few statements are terminated by semicolon. So all the C programming language statements except few statements are terminated by the semicolon. That's why semicolon is called as statement terminator. So here you can see all the statements are terminated with semicolon. Okay, declarative statements, executive statements are terminated with semicolon. This preprocessor directive, function, declaration, etc. they are not terminated by this semicolon. Semicolon. You can say declarative and executable statements are terminated by semicolon. So A equal to 10 means store the 10 in A, B equal to 20 means store B in 20. Store B in 20. When you write C equal to A plus B, that means A content and B content are to be added and store the content in C. That means A is 10, B is 20. So 10 plus 20, store it in C. So after that, I can print the value of C. Now what exactly is this percentage D? We will see. It is called as format specifier. There are different format specifiers. We will discuss the general syntax of printf later. But for the time being, you can just remember, if you write like this, if C is an integer variable, you have to write here percentage D. So C content is printed. C content is printed. This is the example C program. Now conversion from .c file to .exe file. That means we will be writing the C code. How to convert it into the exe file? Exe file is one which actually gets executed, which you can execute directly the exe file. Whereas .c file you cannot directly execute. So now what are the steps? So you take any C file, say file name .c, it is called a source file. So first pre-processing is done. So after that you get what is called as preprocessor file, which has extension .i. Source file has the extension .c, whereas preprocessor file will have an extension .i. Now this preprocessor file again is given as input to the compiler. So when you give this as input to the compiler, it converts into what is called as object file name .object file. So it is the result of compilation process. After compilation, we will be doing what is called as linking of the code which you have included in say .h files. So that will be included, and everything put together is called as exe file. So obj file, we can say it is the true translation of source file. Makki ki makki in Telugu. Makki ki makki. So true translation. Whereas whatever the header files etc. which you have included, the code that is present, the declarations that are present in those files will be added, and then it will result in what is called as executable file .exe file. The advantage of exe file is you can directly run it. You need not compile again. You can directly run it. So this is the conversion process. So what we have studied, the general syntax of a C program, or first we have studied the features of a C program, general syntax of a C program, and an example program. So this is introduction to C. Wish you a good luck. Thank you.